whether one pharmacy dispenses 100 drugs or one pharmacy dispenses one drug, isn't the impact on the manufacturer the same? Whether one pharmacy dispenses 100 drugs or one pharmacy dispenses one drug. Hey guys, welcome to another episode. I am really excited because we have the man, the myth, the legend, Tom Siepka. Tom's been on before. You guys probably remember him from the last conversation we're going to link to, the one on what PBMs are and why it matters. Tom, before we get started, could you introduce yourself?
Sure. Tom Siepka. I am the CEO and president of HCI Healthcare Consultants, pharmacist. I've been in healthcare too long, honestly, but for many years, been prior chief pharmacy officer for a few different organizations, including acute care, academic hospital systems and networks. And yeah, I've been in the 340B program space probably since 2002, working with different entities. So for a long period of time.
I don't know what that means. What is the 340B program?
It is providing a drug discount mandated to manufacturers for entities that, what is called like a covered entity. So what is a covered entity? Hospitals. Certain hospitals meet criteria caring for an underinsured portion of the population once they meet a certain level on that. And for this example, for DISH, what they call DISH hospitals, disproportionate share hospitals, is one type of covered entity. But once they qualify, they're allowed to buy medications, being a qualified covered entity at a steep discount compared to the normal list price that is out there for a non-340B entity. And that savings is meant to go to the covered entity. There's been a lot of confusion about that, but it goes to the covered entity to help them, I think the definition on the HRSA website, to stretch scarce federal resources. So this program is meant to be an offset so these organizations can provide services out to the community, programs, et cetera. So it's meant to really help these covered entities because they are really taking a disproportionate share of the uninsured population in the healthcare market. So it's meant to be an offset for them.
The idea that the government is trying to create and address this offset by asking private people, private companies to pay for that offset. Why not just tax the companies?
Well, I didn't say it was a perfect program, Sean. It is a program. It's been out for a long period of time. Like when I started in this work with 340B, I was already a pharmacy director and leader, and it was about 2002 with the organization, the hospital I was working with, qualified, and we had signed up for that program to get that benefit. This program solution was it's not taxpayer funded. All right. So this, to your point, is it fair or not? I think with this particular situation, it was the plan to say the private sector will fund through a mandated discount an offset to these organizations that are underpaid because they're servicing underserviced, folks. Right or wrong, the program's been out for what, 30-ish plus years, and it has sustained. And it's been dramatic, the type of improvements that can be made. And also, I would say there are organizations that are 340B entities that you would not think of as being a 340B entity. Like they qualified for the program, they're able to leverage it, create a lot of revenue. They drive investment. They have to be a nonprofit. That's one of the criteria.
So give me an example of unexpected companies that fall inside the 340B program that you've sort of come across. So I'm sure there are like a million other options, but
I would say like a federally qualified health center, right? Community health center that is federally funded through a grant, right? They qualify to be a federally qualified health center through a 330 grant through HRSA. And that qualifies them for the 340B program. They service the underinsured or uninsured patient population heavily. They're community-based, nonprofit, obviously, and that's I would say one of the examples of an organization you would think like, okay, this is a 340B entity. That makes sense to me because of the population they serve and the mission they have.
Tell me how that works. Tell me what the general process is to either walk me through that process. How do you qualify? How do you tell someone you qualify? How do you get the product? Do you need to register? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, you have to register. So as a grantee, you qualify. We talked about that as a grantee. If you're a hospital that meets that threshold we talked about, to being qualified as a disproportionate share hospital, 11.75 or greater, they have to go and register. It's based off of the CMS Medicare cost reports. That's how it's validated. They make sure they meet the criteria. They enroll in the program, and then a quarter later, so say, and this is a quarterly process on how the government runs the program. They apply, they get approved a quarter later. They are officially eligible then for 340B. Mhm.
Once you know that you're qualified, do you then go to HRSA and
Yes.
register yourself? Okay.
Yes, yeah, there's a process to go through. They'll review that registration, make sure you do qualify, will notify you, and then a quarter later you're in the program. Listed in the program, and you can be referenced by manufacturers and wholesalers and things like that.
Do manufacturers get notified of this, or do you just reach out to manufacturers and then go, I am now qualified, I would like these products to be given?
Well, there's not many people that buy stuff directly from manufacturers these days, right? So everything is really bought through a wholesaler. So the wholesaler has been historically the gatekeeper of who is 340B eligible or not, because they would load the pricing from the manufacturer and would load you onto 340B pricing availability or not based off of them checking the HRSA website.
So what I'm really hearing you say is no one's really disputing that these uh, entities qualify for the most part.
Correct.
What you're really seeing is manufacturers saying that there's too much taken away from them, as opposed to these people shouldn't have qualified in the first place. Is that an accurate description?
Yeah, I think one of the things that really drove it, some of the interpretations. So I think
Mm.
where some of the issues are around 340B2 is the original statute is kind of broad and doesn't have an extreme amount of detail. Like there's nowhere in the statute, the original statute, that says anything about contract pharmacy. And contract pharmacy is a common thing in the 340B world where an entity that qualifies will say, you know what, either I don't have an in-house pharmacy to service this outpatient, or we have one, but it's limited. So I need to work with an outside pharmacy, contract with them to be my pharmacy on my behalf, and then extend 340B discounts and benefits that way, right? That is really expanded. And that has been, I think, a huge pain point, a concern point with manufacturers, where the manufacturers to say, well, this contract pharmacy program was really expanded and caused a lot of issues. And we feel like potential abuse of the 340B program.
Enjoying our content? We'd love to hear more. Please like, comment, share, and find more.
From my perspective, someone needs to get the drugs. A
Mhm.
pharmacy is the only way to get the drugs. The distributor will not sell directly to the patient, which means you need a pharmacy. So
Yep.
why is the contract pharmacy such a problematic thing?
Well, I think there were some interpretations where they could have a contract pharmacy, and then HHS said a covered entity can have multiple contract pharmacies. So I'll give you an example where it could make sense. A very small community health center relies on this program to provide funding to keep its services open, which is very common. They're not big enough to have their own in-house pharmacy. So they have a mom and pop pharmacy down the street or a CVS, and they contract with them to help service their patients. I think everyone feels in the world that kind of makes sense. Then you have there are some large, I will leave them unnamed, large academic systems that qualify for 340B that have hundreds of contract pharmacies, 100, 200 plus contract pharmacies. Some of that you could say, well, they're a large system, right? And they have, patients in a large area, geographical area. I think it's a point where how much is too much?
Why does the number of pharmacies matter at all? Like I feel like I'm missing a central point somewhere. Whether one pharmacy dispenses 100 drugs or one pharmacy dispenses one drug, isn't the impact on the manufacturer the same?
Well, in the truest sense, but what's happening in reality, if you only have one or two contract pharmacies and you're missing about 98, you're not really qualifying all the prescriptions you can in that program, right? So the liability, and I think sometimes manufacturers look at the 340B program this way, this cost liability to them is limited. If I have, instead of two contract pharmacies, I have 100, well, the chances of me filling most of those prescriptions or covering most of that is higher, but then the financial liability for the manufacturer or what they're giving out as a discount level is going to be much, much greater, right? I think it's a financial situation that's driving it, and utilizing clarity, non-clarity in the laws that exist today as a way to push back against that cost to them, because they are forced to sell right under
Sure.
340B at a steep discount, and their view of it is that is meant just for that one site in maybe
Sure.
their one pharmacy, not a huge network, is farmers' view of that, and feels like that's a liability and abuse of the program. You're abusing the program. I think
Why is it abuse though? I don't understand that part.
well, that it's abuse if there's an allegation that you're doing something wrong, but if you're doing everything correctly,
Exactly.
right, and everything is done appropriately, there is no abuse of the program. It's just the program. But I think from a farmer standpoint, this program has grown in numbers of how many people now are become 340B covered entities, and the contract pharmacy access points have exploded, right, and have become quite large, right, where a lot of pharmacies are contract pharmacies today. They just feel it's too much of a liability that way to them. This is my interpretation, right? And why they're pushing back. They want to see more guidance. So I think both parties, pharma, covered entities, everyone's saying we'd like to have more clarity in the law, more specifics. I think everyone's for that. But depending what the clarity and the specifics are, those are probably going to differ depending on which side of the argument you're on today.
Follow our page on LinkedIn.
What I'm finding difficult to reconcile is the solution seems very simple. You just get a roving consultant pharmacist who's going to go out and qualify them. The costs drop down dramatically to qualify the patients. You'd still get the same number of patients, and pharma would still keep paying as appropriate under the statute. Am I missing something?
Well, I think the other fear we didn't really talk about is there's a protection in the regulation against a duplicative discount, right? Meaning that a manufacturer, pharma, is protected from, I'm going to give you a 340B discount on that drug. But remember our other talk when we talked about PBMs, they have rebates and incentives. They can't be double dipped. The pharma company can't be like, I'm going to give this drug out, this claim, right, for this prescription out at 340B. You can't take that same claim and collect a rebate on it because then I'm paying two discounts all of a sudden. They're protected in that. And I think that's probably one of the other big points. And there might be some validity with this, like with think about millions of transactions that happen with claims and prescriptions being processed, that there haven't been some claims that have probably been processed at 340B and also paid a rebate.
Before we end this, I have one last question about this, which is if the rebate program happens, and we haven't spoken about the rebate program yet, does that mean that these hospitals are likely to divest of the pharmacies going forward?
I don't think so, at least not in the near future, right? There's a couple of impacts that we'll need to talk about, I think in maybe more of a next session. So there is HHS releasing that guidance on rebates, but it's related to the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act. Medications on that list are the ones that have been identified to be available for rebate potential. And also those medications are now being negotiated by CMS. So the 340B payments for those are going to dramatically drop, right? Because again, the way 340B is built, it assumes a higher payment, cost of the drug. Your 340B discount is it's a steep discount. So that delta between those 2 points, what an insurer or someone pays for that benefit is the benefit that comes back to the organization, right? That they can use to help pay for providers and services.
I think we're going to have to do another whole conversation on just what are the biggest challenges everyone faces around 340B, because what we're discovering is there are these little threads you have to keep pulling at. So stay tuned. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But before we go, Tom, how can people reach you if they have questions?
Go to our website, hcihealthcare.net. You can read about us. We have, a request for information button, stuff like that. So that's probably the easiest way to get in touch.
Thank you again, Tom.
All right. Thank you, Darshan.
Call, click, or email.